The United States and Iran traded strikes for the 12th straight night as the two sides ramp up both the fighting and the rhetoric. President Trump yesterday reiterated his threat to target civilian infrastructure in Iran, which would likely amount to a war crime if realized. The president warned on Truth Social that anytime Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant, even in or near Tehran. Iran's foreign minister responded to Trump's threat, writing, quote, "Our defense doctrine is clear, eye for an eye. Any aggression against Iran, including our infrastructure, will compel a powerful and decisive response." Meanwhile, the fighting continues, with the U.S. military saying its strikes are centered on degrading Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, despite the president making this claim at that rally yesterday in Georgia.
If you combine us and Venezuela, we have about 62% of the world's oil market. So we don't need straits. We don't need anything. We don't need the Hormuz Strait, but we do it because we have to do it, because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
We talk about the toll of this war all the time, usually in an economic sense, but the human toll was front and center yesterday as President Trump traveled to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to attend the dignified transfer of 4 young U.S. service members recently killed overseas. 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez, 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 28-year-old Sergeant Angel S. Rempersan, and 30-year-old Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton all died amid the escalating attacks in the Middle East. Before heading to Dover to witness the return of those fallen soldiers, President Trump spoke to reporters about them and his message to their families.
We're going to Dover. Some of you are going with us to honor our heroes, and they are indeed great heroes, actually. They said, and all of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon.
Sir, what do you say to families of these fallen soldiers when Americans are wrongly against this war? How do you ask them?
Well, Americans aren't against the war. A poll just came out. Americans don't want high gasoline prices, but they're not against the war. That just came out loud and clear in a poll.
A Washington Post Ipsos poll from last week found only 29% of Americans approve of the way Trump is handling this conflict in Iran. 69% disapprove. And he was saying that he said the troops were saying we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. We don't know how he knows that or if that's what these soldiers felt. Meanwhile, the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen say they've carried out missile and drone attacks on 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. These are the first claimed attacks since the Yemeni group announced a blockade on Saudi Arabia. Saudi officials confirmed one strike, saying the tanker caught fire, but stopped short of naming who was responsible and didn't comment on the second ship. The Houthis claim both vessels violated the blockade and say they also forced several other ships to turn around, but those claims haven't been independently verified. Analysts say the attacks mark another escalation in tensions, though, and could disrupt global oil supplies while increasing the risk of a wider regional conflict. It's that volatility where I want to start with President and CEO of the Global Situation Room, Brett Bruen. Brett, the reason I use the word volatile is because you study both the conflict itself, but then also the impact on global leaders and business leaders across the world. And it's the volatility that's starting to show up in something that you call the Reputation Risk Index. And you guys put this out every quarter. Talk about how this conflict is manifesting there.
We did. And this is the first quarter where we have seen the war as the top reputation risk. Let me just break that down. Obviously, it's a security risk. It is a political risk. But when it comes to companies, all of a sudden, the price increases, the supply challenges, the national brand blemishing has taken a toll. And I think this is what a lot of business leaders, a lot of boards are struggling with right now is how do I plan forward? How do I make investments? How do I hire? How do I retain my customers when I don't know what's coming next?
And so you're studying that, but then you're also someone who has worked in these White Houses. You understand the ways that a message from the president or top administration officials could quell the waters a little bit during an extremely volatile time. Wars are that. But we're not hearing that from them.
We're not. And what is so disturbing, Ali, is you want to have a clear mission. I mean, I served for a year in Iraq as a diplomat. I was out there on a forward operating base, and at least you understood what our mission was. We started here 5 months ago, and we were told taking out Iran's missiles, taking out the nuclear capabilities, as well as the regime itself. These days, we are hearing a very different tune out of the White House. And then we had the memorandum of misunderstanding, which, has led to where we are right now. So I think pressing the president and, saying, Mr. President, why are we losing these soldiers? Why are 100 soldiers just in the last 2 weeks suffering from very serious injuries in some cases? If you say they're there for, the regime change, that is very different than trying to remove the capability to develop nuclear weapons.
I also think there is a big question that's been looming on Capitol Hill the entire time, especially as Hegseth came up the other day to ask for more money to continue this conflict, which is this the last time we're going to be hearing from you that you need more money and resources to continue prosecuting this war effort because the end game is so ill-defined? And then you layer on top of it the ways that now the president and the Iranians both are basically saying Hammurabi's code, eye for an eye. And more than that, speaking in ways that we don't often hear presidents speak about what this war could turn into.
Well, and let's just take one comparison to illustrate the picture. In the first year of Ukraine's conflict with Russia, the U.S. spent about $25 billion. We have already spent, according to Hegseth, and the figures may be significantly more when you add in the damage to our bases and what we are going to have to rebuild, $37 billion. And so you had Trump and the Republicans complaining about how much money was going to Ukraine, and yet we are spending tens of billions of dollars more and asking for substantial amounts on top of the $1.5 trillion that they're requesting for the Department of Defense. And so all of this raises the critical question, what for? And to that point, I think they have got to lay out a plan. All right, you want another, $70 billion. How is it going to be used, and how do we know? Because this concept of endless wars, I think, is very much looming on the horizon, and they don't have good answers for it.
My other question, though, is do they have to lay out that end goal, especially given the ways that Republicans have been keen to give so much leeway, so much patience on this, even as their own political fortunes are very much tied up in ending it as quickly as possible?
And yet they're going before voters right now. And we're going to see more and more instances of the campaigning, of the town halls, of the interactions with friends, family, of not just those that have been lost or injured, but those who are in harm's way. And I think they are going to want the answers that Republicans, as well as Democratic members of Congress, are going to have to be accountable for. And so while the president may want to try to spin his way out of this, it is going to become a clear and present danger to a lot of those up on the Hill if they can't provide answers to why are we there and when does this end?
So foreign policy impacts, certainly global impacts, political, and then, of course, the reputational risk that you're now seeing show up in business communities as well. President and CEO of the Global Situation Room, Brett Bruen, thank you for coming on with us.